my mom died when I was 14, uh, just suddenly in the kitchen. So it was just her and I talking one day. She was making me breakfast. It was my first day at my first real job at the local library. And it was like an hour or two before I had to leave. And suddenly she said she didn't feel well and
Oh
she
man.
collapsed. So I tried my best work at a CPR that I had learned in a babysitting class I had taken that summer. I called 911. I called my father. She ended up dying that day. So luckily, my parents were hobbyist photographers. Both of them were chemists.
Hmm.
My dad has a doctorate in chemistry. My mom went to college for chemistry and had always throughout their lives turned any bathroom into a darkroom and just like always shot black and white, always shot Kodachrome, like sort of just
Yeah.
loved photography just because it was sort of this, it was an art plus it was chemistry in a way. So when my dad, after she died, my dad was like, could you put together all the pictures for the memorial service? And he handed me this like beat up cardboard box. I had never seen it before. It was like living in my parents' closet. And he handed it to me and said, can you just like put together something for the funeral? And I found this, like, I'm a 100% Sicilian. So my only family came in, they're loud, really obnoxious. I found this quiet
Yeah.
little corner um, and just sort of sat there with this box. And I had contact sheets to go through, and I had prints that they had made. Some of them had started to yellow because they sat in the fixer too long or whatever. But I fell in love with all the pictures because they weren't Sears portrait, they weren't Olin Mills. They were photos of my mom laughing, not looking at the camera. And I suddenly started to realize like the power of photography, right? Because
Yeah.
I could see, I was only 14, and as a 14-year-old, you think you know everything, but I never knew my mom as an adult, like not as a parent, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So this sort of gave me an insight into who my parents were together as a couple. And I became obsessed with photography. So I'm an only child. And the joke is always that my dad didn't know what to do with me. So I wouldn't leave him alone. And so he built me a darkroom and was like, stay in the basement.
Oh.
um, but he taught me how to develop film and how to enlarge prints. So my dad is like a very quiet, non-emotional kind of showing person.
Yeah.
So we never really talked about the loss of my mother, but it would be him and I developing negatives of pictures of my mother in the dark room in the basement. Um, and there's something about watching a print come up. I don't know if you've ever been in a dark room,
I
but watching a
have.
print come up. Okay, so like that magical moment where like you're shaking the trays or whatever and you're watching the print.
Hmm.
Um, so we kind of worked through our grief with photography. I think the other aspect of like going through all of the work that my parents had taken, I was only an only child, so I had tons of photos of my childhood.
Hmm.
And so it really taught me, even if my mother wasn't in a photo physically, she was taking a photo. And you and I could be in a room and take a picture of the same subject, but it wouldn't necessarily be the same because your life experiences are different than my life experiences. And so we would approach it, and there's no wrong way, you know what I mean? But we would approach it differently.
For
So
sure.
that idea is like, I got to see how my mom saw me. If you're like following, if you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because she would take pictures of me sleeping on the couch. She would take pictures of me like covered in spaghetti. You know what I mean? Like she would just take pictures, and I sort of got to have this idea or this identity of how she saw me that I sort of carried with me along with the power of like photography and the fragileness of life. Um, yeah.
That definitely, I feel like it's difficult to place into an artist's mind, a photographer's mind, the importance of what they're doing until, like, because you can say all the words, like we have all the training, all the education to try to teach people what these things actually mean, and yet they really still don't understand until they've actually gone through something for themselves, until they've actually experienced it firsthand. That being said, to have experienced that at 14 years old, I'm as much a student of human psychology as I am of photography, and that has to very much make an impression to the point where at a young age you knew exactly what a photograph was. You probably knew from that point forward you'd have a camera in your hand all your life. Was that ingrained at that point?
Yeah. I took a camera everywhere. I was kind of shy and awkward. I'm still kind of shy and awkward, but especially as a high schooler. So, like, she died in July of '94. I was just starting to be a freshman in high school. So, I joined yearbook. I had a camera with me in my hand. I would take my friends and like make them do artsy things and take photos of them. I would always bring it to family functions. I photographed everything. Because I loved picking up a camera and because I knew what a gift all of it was, right? Like what a gift it was to simply be in high school that day, or what a gift it was to be in the presence of someone you love, right? Like it's all just like how lucky we are, right?
Yeah.
So I did all of that, and I photographed all of the yearbooks for 4 years. It was great. And so then I shot somebody's wedding because basically they were probably looking for a cheaper option.
Yeah.
But I never imagined that I could make a career out of photography. Like that felt impossible.
Photography is such an interesting art because the only thing that you really have to differentiate you is just your perspective. And I don't mean like perspective like eyes. I mean like your experiences. It's what allows you to see the world differently. So if I were to hire somebody, the most honestly, the of every single possible thing that could be said to me from, if I were the client, somebody saying, "Oh, I shoot with this gear and I use this lighting and I do this and this is what I do." The most valuable thing I could possibly know is somebody's life experiences, what you just shared. That would be it for me. Like, if that is your life experience, I want to be photographed through those eyes where you can actually see the incredible in the mundane. If you can find those moments, that is exactly what people are looking for. Now, how do you translate that experience into how you speak to your clients?
I mean, usually when clients are interviewing me for a job, they will ask me how I got into photography. So, like, I won't necessarily go into all of the detail of
The depth of
being
what we
diagnosed with
discovered.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I will say the loss of my mother and realizing how important a photograph
Yeah.
is what makes me pick up a camera, right? And so that answer of why I'm a photographer and how I got into it is like what gets me through summers that are like crazy busy and I'm shooting X amount of weddings and you get exhausted. It's just like, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because maybe these people don't realize this yet, but it's going to be a huge deal that everybody they love is in the same room, right? It's going to be a
Yeah.
really big deal that their grandmother's there or that their mom is like getting their dress on with them or whatever it is, their first dance with their dad. Like all of these moments, even though they're contrived in a way that like every wedding sort of feels the same, it's very personal to them.